Welcome to another interview with El Vocero Hispano. Today I have Kent County Sheriff Michelle La-Joye Young. She is the sheriff of Kent County. She has been there for almost 3 years, since 2018, and she has been overseeing the whole office as the first appointed female sheriff in Kent County history and the only female sheriff in the state of Michigan. She has much experience in the department. She has previously worked as a chief deputy and undersheriff, has worked in corrections, communications, patrol, and that's just a little bit to name a few. Thank you for being here. I know you're busy, but we do appreciate your time.
Really glad to be here. Thank you.
We have a lot to speak about. There's different topics, but I'd like to begin with what types of emergencies or what areas does Kent County cover? I know it kind of says Kent County, but is there any guidelines or anything that you guys are focused on?
Generally speaking, if you call 911 and need a police officer and you are within the city limits of any community, you'll have that city police department respond to your call. But if you're outside of the city limits, and it's called the unincorporated areas of Kent County, that would be any township. That's our major patrol area. The state police kind of in there too. They do expressways and M roads in Kent County. So they can take other law enforcement action, but they don't generally respond to 911 calls outside of the expressways or M roads, like M11 or M37, just to name a couple of them.
Okay, so if there was a speed chase going on and it goes through Allegan County, does Kent County go through as well, or?
We can. We would have to have permission, if you will, from Allegan County. They'd actually have to ask for our assistance before we would continue into Allegan County. But the sheriff's office can perform a law enforcement function anywhere in Kent County. So your same example in the city of Grand Rapids, we could continue on even without the Grand Rapids Police Department asking for our assistance. We generally don't. We're generally in very close communication with communities ahead of where we think they're going, and to the side of it to make sure that everybody's prepared to bring that to a safe end. So it normally doesn't happen that one of our people would be pursuing into a community that we don't police. But just to put perspective on it, in terms of how much of the county, the majority of people are in our patrol area. So there's about almost 300,000 people in Kent County. That would be our general law enforcement responsibility.
Okay. I was just asking that question because I've seen a lot of people, I'm not sure if this actually does have an influence. If when Kent County is involved in probably a scene, does that mean that the crime is more serious, or is it just that?
It could mean that that crime takes additional resources beyond what a community might have. And that could be because there's multiple things happening all in the same time frame, and you just start to run out of people to assign to everything. It might be because something should be investigated by an outside agency, like perhaps if there's an officer involved in a car accident or some type of incident where has been a fatality. They would generally call just a different law enforcement agency to come in. We'll assist a lot in that. And then times where there's heavy equipment that's necessary. Not every community has the same equipment, so we share a lot of those resources among all the agencies in Kent County. So you might see us on a scene where you need a drone or some kind of response vehicle, something like that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of comments made when I see a whole bunch of different police enforcement, so it's good to know that you clarified that.
Yep, it's just shared resources.
Yeah, okay. And in 2019, I know that there was a contract between the Kent County Jail and immigration officials, but that hasn't been renewed anymore, what I know. So that contract, it would just let Kent County officials send information of an undocumented person to immigration. Has all the ICE relations completely stopped, or is there still some
So that's not actually what the contract did.
Okay.
So the contract, and I believe it kind of dates back to 2012 was when the original contract came into being. And it was, the only criteria was that the sheriff's office, if ICE housed somebody in the facility, would be paid for the cost to recover the cost of housing. And it was very seldom used ever in Kent County, just because we didn't house people for ICE very often. But in the occasion, because there's a federal court in Kent County, it was more a way to make sure Kent County residents didn't pay their taxes for a responsibility that is ICE. Really had nothing to do with communicating with ICE.
Okay.
So as it stands, then several years later, it became a lot more clear that there was some community interest in us not having that contract, even if it was because of how it felt to our residents.
Yeah.
And so when I became sheriff, we first put additional requirements in. I think if you look back, we required a signed judicial warrant in order to hold somebody specifically for ICE. And that went into effect late 18 when I first became sheriff. The latter part of 19, our contract was up for renewal or not renewal, and both parties agreed not to renew it.
Okay.
So, and we haven't really considered it since. So what happens right now is if somebody is lodged for something other than ICE, and they have a criminal offense that they're lodged for, by state law and also federal law, we take fingerprints, and those fingerprints can be reviewed by ICE. So ICE will know potentially that somebody is incarcerated. By federal law, we have to answer their questions. If they call and say, is this individual in custody, we answer their questions, and we'll tell them they'll be here until this date. Or we don't know what date they'll be here till, which is often the case in a jail.
Yeah.
We don't know. So we do have to share information, and we do share information. But ICE can't say, hold them there until we get there anymore, unless they have a judicial warrant, which typically is going to be in cases where somebody has been previously deported and have now appeared back in the community. And it would be that circumstance generally that ICE would have a judicial warrant. There are other circumstances too, but it's not very common. Beyond that, somebody still can be brought into custody from ICE when they're being released from the sheriff's office. If we're done with all local charges, they get released. An ICE official can be there and take them into custody.
Okay. I just asked that because I've heard a lot of different rumors and stories, so it's good to clarify everything, because I think that my community kind of mixes a lot of information. So another thing that I've seen or have heard is that they say that immigration comes to Kent County Jail on specific days. Is that true, or is it just they just go? There's two parts to it. They can come interview on specific days. So if the agent has 10 people he's supposed to interview, he might make arrangements, because they do have to make appointments with us. Might make arrangements to be here from 1 to 5 on Tuesday afternoon. Right? And I'm just using it as an example. I don't know the dates. So they may come to do that, but they don't have any scheduled pickups. Because again, I won't hold them until ICE gets there. So it's whenever that person is scheduled to get out of custody, they get out of custody on that day. And if that's an individual ICE is interested in picking up, then they're there to pick them up, or they're not, and they're released. Just to use an example, so if a person is arrested for I don't know, maybe speeding or, whatever the case may be. They happen to be undocumented, but they pay their bond before any, immigration officials are there. So they just pay their bond. Are they able to be released?
Yes.
Okay. And then if immigration wants to get them afterwards, then that's on them.
They can find them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that scenario, people don't usually get arrested for speeding.
Yeah.
But like a drunk driving offense would be a good example of that. First time offense, never been charged with anything before. You get arrested. That particular offense will be held overnight because that's the rules for drunk driving.
Okay.
But then you'll be released, and most of those individuals are released.
Okay.
Unless they have other charges, other warrants, that kind of thing, that might hold them in custody. But if this is the first thing you've ever done wrong, you're probably going to be released the next morning. And if that alerts ICE, which I doubt that it would, but if it did, they would, perhaps catch up with you at court or catch up with you back at the address you reported. But we will not hold for ICE.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And changing topics, we have seen that crime has increased tremendously in Kent County and in Grand Rapids as well. Can you tell me what your thoughts are on this, like why this might be happening?
Yeah, it's quite alarming, to be really honest about it. We often think of things as individual events. This happened over here, and this happened over here, and this happened over here. And historically, law enforcement often thought of it that way too. But more and more, we're trying to work to look for patterns of incidents and then commonalities between incidents so that we can get somebody in custody before they continue to do the same kinds of crime. But when there are so many happening simultaneously and spread out among many different portions of our community, we get challenged because we have to thoroughly investigate cases. And we don't just want to scoop a bunch of people up because we think they're involved. We really need to develop probable cause. The challenge of that is, one, the number of events that are happening, but two, also how involved people around the incident get in telling us what happened, giving eyewitness accounts, supplying information and follow-up. So it's really, really imperative that everybody in our community understands it's all of our job. There are never going to be enough police to be everywhere to protect every person. But there are enough neighbors. There are enough community members to help protect every person. And if we work together, these patterns are, they're cut off early and there are fewer victims. If we don't work together, then often the pattern grows exponentially and it becomes that much more difficult. So to answer how that's happening, I think there are portions of our community that are not working together to try to resolve incidents, and that then spills over on the entire community. So we just have to encourage everybody, you are your brother's keeper, you are your neighbor's keeper. This is our community, and to stay safe, it has to be all of us working together.
Yeah. Over the years, have you seen that community members are being more involved or helping out police enforcement more?
No.
Or they're not?
No.
Okay.
I am seeing some individuals feel less inclined to help resolve crimes. And, I think there's a whole bunch of different reasons. And I think we're more isolated as human beings right now, maybe because of COVID, maybe because of some of the community conversations surrounding race and different issues. But I think by and large, I find that people are less likely to get involved or less likely to take responsibility for helping their community. And I really think that has to be the conversation we're all having right now. You are your community's best opportunity to stay safe.
Okay. And then you guys are working with Silent Observers, so that's
We do.
An organization that allows people to just send their tips anonymously.
Right.
And we do have the numbers on screen too, that if you guys ever do experience or see a crime and don't want to, give your identification out, that's the safe way, I guess.
Yes, and you can also do that online.
Okay.
So if you feel more comfortable typing or texting, we get all of those tips. We get it without the tipster's information. There are rewards that you can get for submitting a tip that ends an incident. And again, communities can work together to prevent crimes too by helping keep an eye on each other's cars and
Yeah.
houses. Remind your neighbor if they are leaving their car running in the driveway. It's a really bad idea.
Yeah.
A lot of cars are being stolen right now. If you see somebody around your neighbor's car outside that doesn't normally be at that house, that's something to at least say to your neighbor, hey, there's somebody out there. Is that somebody you know? We're happy to investigate if you call us too. Okay. So there are some things that you can do to stay safe, but it's imperative we all work on it.
Okay. Have you seen any common crimes being committed? You mentioned the car thefts, but is there anything else?
You know, and so the car thefts, I do have to point out, it's a 25% increase since the last couple years, and those cars are often being stolen and then used in other crimes. We've had a number of shootings that have been related to stolen cars, what we call smash and grabs, which are, you know, perhaps at a cell phone store or something like that, where they smash through the display case and take things. There's been a homicide recently that was related to stolen cars. So it's very bad in that the car is stolen, right? And that's something that's important to somebody's livelihood and their feeling of safety. But then it's even worse when it's used to commit another crime. And then just reckless driving, which is very dangerous. We had a hit and run. A person was injured just last week from a stolen vehicle. And we have numerous reports of reckless driving where people are literally driving through red lights at high speeds. And so it is imperative that everybody's cautious about the security of their vehicle. Don't leave it running at a store. Don't leave it running at a gas station. Don't leave it running in your driveway, even if it's locked. And just make sure you report if you see somebody that doesn't belong somewhere.
Yeah. And then within the ages of the suspects or criminals, I guess you could say, is it true that it's being more of like younger people, teenagers being involved in this?
We're seeing a number of young people being involved in this, and which kind of does go with the reckless driving, right? Because they don't know how to drive. So they're stealing a vehicle. They might be 13, 14, 15 years old, and they have no idea what the rules of the streets are, how to control that vehicle. So that's a problem. We also do see older individuals who are either managing younger people or mentoring younger people into committing some crimes. So that's a trend we see as well. I wouldn't say that it's restricted to any age group, though. A lot of the shootings seem to be a little bit older. So.
And do you believe that the firearm usage is also increasing as well?
Yes, it is. Very much increasing as well. There are a lot of illegal weapons that are in our community right now, not just our community, many communities. So it is a very dangerous set of circumstances that we're experiencing.
What are your thoughts on gun control?
You know, obviously, it's kind of beyond my authority to decide who gets to have a weapon and who doesn't get to have a weapon. I think that's something the national dialogue that's happening. There are constitutional rights that are there, and so making sure that we respect people's rights, but doing it in a responsible way. The one thing I do feel very strongly about, though, is gun security. So if you own weapons, whether you're a store that sells weapons or a private citizen that has a number of weapons in your home, keeping them where they're stored in a secure way is a responsibility you have. So it's not just okay to leave them in a drawer or, you know, in the store's account. They sometimes would leave them out on display counters and things like that. So if somebody got into the store, they had access to a number of weapons. We've worked really closely with gun stores, so now that they're stored in safes. So even if somebody breaks inside, they can't get the weapons. But even taking that into account in your car or in your house and, you know, trying to store weapons in a safe, it's better for so many reasons, even just the safety of the people that are in your home. But I do think that's a responsibility of a gun owner to secure that weapon.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot of stories too of shootings happening because of
Right.
not having enough security. So
Right.
that's just something that I think everybody should consider.
We all have
if
to
they
do that part. Yeah.
Yep. And with domestic violence, I believe we have heard more about it now since we've seen really sad stories happening here locally. Have you seen this increase yourself?
Yes, absolutely. We have seen an increase. I wouldn't necessarily say there is now an increase in the number of domestic violence events, but I would say we have an increase in the violence involved in the domestic violence or domestic events. We have far more homicides related to domestic incidents than I ever remember in my career for over 33 years. So, and again, I think it does go back to that feeling in the community of isolation that often contributes to somebody remaining in a bad circumstance longer or not reaching out for help. And so I think whatever we all can do to encourage somebody to not get isolated, not remain isolated, and again, that community often who knows the most about what's going on in a home are the people to the right and to the left of that home. They hear things, call. If you hear things, it could be somebody's life. And then if you yourself are involved in a relationship that has violence or controlling behavior, there are places to get help. YWCA, I'm on their board. They're a very good place to contact for resources. United Way 211 also has a number of contacts, and they'll refer you to the right people. So it's a grave circumstance right now.
What do you recommend people to do? I mean, I've seen that a lot of neighbors or family members, friends, they kind of don't speak up because that's their family or their friend, or they just don't want to get into the situation. But what can you tell those people that like maybe they should be doing something to prevent any further tragedies?
And I think it's important to know how far these incidents can go. You might not want to speak up, but you don't feel comfortable around this family because maybe they fight a lot or you know, there's conflict every time you're around. But understand that once somebody becomes fully isolated from the people around them, it leaves them with no recourse. It leaves them with no way out. Often there's financial dependency. There's certainly emotional dependency. Sometimes there's shared kids in common, and that child's being exposed to behaviors that they tend to repeat and becomes a pattern for their life. So the sooner you can intercede, the more gentle your prompting can be. If you wait until it's now a very violent circumstance, it's something very hard to get involved in. But if you start to suggest resources and outreach when you first start seeing the pattern, it's often when it's the most effective.
Okay. And just one last thing before we go. They're all interesting topics. But right now we have also, I think everybody has been affected with the gas prices.
Oh, my goodness.
They're like over $5 a gallon right now. So it's sad.
Yeah.
But we have seen that Allegan County has already used like 60% of their gas operational budget.
Yeah.
So that means that I guess they're reconsidering what types of emergencies to go respond to. Is that something that Kent County would consider doing?
So just to kind of frame that, a lot of the strategies you're seeing some of the more rural sheriff's departments do now are things that we've been doing for a number of years.
Okay.
We have 850 square miles to cover in Kent County, and although gas prices are always a concern even when they're low, we drive over 1 million miles a year with Kent County Patrol. So you can do the math on what our gas budget must look like and what these numbers are doing to our gas budget.
Yeah.
But I do think it's really important to prioritize police response. And so if it is something that needs an in-person police officer and it needs to be timely, we're going to do everything we can to get somebody there, and to the extent of even going back and asking for more money for gas if we have to.
Okay.
Right now we're able to manage by moving things around within our budget. I haven't exceeded our amount yet, but it is definitely, if it were to continue the rest of the year at this price, I would likely have to go back and ask Kent County Board of Commissioners for additional funds to support it. But I don't think responsibly I can minimize it right now.
Okay. Do you think they would allow you to get more?
You know, the Board of Commissioners, I really can't speak enough about how cooperative they are in making good public safety choices. Not to say they give me whatever I ask for, but if I'm asking for something that is important to respond to emergency calls for service, I believe they would do that and find other places to cut the resources.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for clarifying a lot of different topics. I know that there's a lot of rumors or mix-ups being told, so it's good to always clarify what really is going on within, Kent County and you guys. So thank you for being here.
Always happy to be here. Glad to come back anytime you'd like to talk.
Thank you. And then if you or someone you know has been experiencing or has witnessed a crime, we do have the numbers on screen too. If you guys want to do that anonymously or just through online, we can also provide the links for that on the description. And domestic violence as well, there is always help out there. We can also provide the phone numbers for that as well. Thank you for being here. And
can I add something?
Yes.
So I think it's really important every time I talk in the community to understand we have a critical shortage of manpower. Not just my agency, but all agencies. And so if you are interested in serving the public, if you're interested in doing something perhaps in corrections or dispatch or law enforcement, there are a number of openings at most agencies right now, and we'd love to talk to you.
Okay, I will also provide the link for that as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this interview. For more interviews in English or Spanish, you can visit our YouTube page on El Vocero Hispano TV or on our website, elvocerous.com.